Paul, There Was a Crooked Man with Kirk Douglas and Henry Fonda, and Joe Mankiewicz is the director on it. And I thought, well, maybe someday I would do films, but I'm not going to go out to Hollywood and say, all right, Hollywood, here I am.
Barbara Rhoades stunned Hollywood in There Was a Crooked Man, a performance whispered about for decades. Rumors claimed she left nothing to the imagination, yet audiences never saw the full daring scene. What really happened on set? Was it censorship, studio caution, or something else entirely? In this deep dive, we uncover the story behind Barbara's legendary performance, the film's secretive production, and how one unseen scene cemented her place in cinematic lore. A bold moment that continues to fascinate. Rhoades' bold performance. Barbara's performance in There Was a Crooked Man has long been whispered about in Hollywood circles, an almost mythical scene that audiences never fully saw. Even today, decades later, the story circulates not because of what was on screen, but because of what was intended behind the camera. During production, rumors swirled that Rhoades would take on a daring, intimate moment, a scene that would test the boundaries of mainstream cinema at the time. For 70s Hollywood, this was extraordinary. Her earlier roles had showcased charm, wit, and comedic timing, but nothing in her career prepared the industry for the attention this scene would generate. The scene was crafted to reveal vulnerability, agency, and emotional depth in a character navigating a male-dominated Western world. It wasn't gratuitous. The script demanded a nuanced performance, relying on Rhoades' ability to convey complexity through subtle expression, body language, and timing. She approached the challenge with professionalism, aware that the sequence would attract scrutiny and fascination alike. The balance between daring and discretion became central to her performance. On set, reports from crew members describe a mix of admiration and tension. Rhoades moved through the scene with calm assurance, understanding that the scene's impact depended as much on suggestion as on explicit action. Cinematographers carefully framed each shot to convey intimacy while respecting the studio's constraints. Director Joseph L. Mankiewicz oversaw the sequence with precision, ensuring it served the narrative and character development without crossing the line of acceptability in 70s film standards. Editing played a crucial role in shaping the final scene. Although the original footage captured daring angles and intimate moments, some shots were cropped. Lighting was altered to obscure detail, and several pieces were removed entirely. The resulting sequence hinted at boldness, but left viewers guessing about its full intent. That gap between the filmed material and what made it to the screen became a defining aspect of the scene's legend. Audiences were intrigued, but the actual content remained tantalizingly out of reach. Co-stars and crew members consistently praised Rhoades' professionalism. She approached the sequence as she would any dramatic scene, prioritizing character and narrative over spectacle or personal attention. Observers have noted that her subtlety and control made the scene far more compelling than if it had been explicit. The interplay between what was suggested and what was concealed created tension, drama, and fascination, an artistry that elevated the sequence beyond mere provocation. The controversy also reflects the cultural context of Hollywood in 1970. While audiences were becoming more open to sexual content in films, studios remained cautious, guided by lingering censorship codes and early MPAA ratings. The balance of daring performance and careful restraint exemplifies the era's tensions. Filmmakers wanted to push boundaries, but the infrastructure of Hollywood still demanded discretion. Rhoades' scene tested those limits without violating them, achieving a rare blend of audacity and subtlety. Ultimately, the scene's power lies in its partial invisibility. Because the full sequence was never shown, it has fueled decades of speculation, gossip, and scholarly interest. The combination of Rhoades's confidence, careful direction, and studio editing transformed a single moment into a legend. Audiences were left to imagine what they never saw, and that imagination made the scene far more enduring than explicit content could have. Even today, film historians and fans revisit the story, fascinated by Rhoades's courage and professionalism, the director's careful hand, and the ways the studio balanced risk with discretion. The sequence stands as a testament to how suggestion, timing, and craft can leave a stronger impression than outright exposure. Barbara Rhoades demonstrated that subtlety can provoke curiosity, admiration, and lasting discussion, creating a scene whose legacy endures not because of what was shown, but because of the story surrounding it. Behind the camera, however, the narrative was just beginning. The film itself, the era in which it was made, and Hollywood's culture around daring performances would continue to shape her legend for years to come. The context behind the controversy. There Was a Crooked Man was released in 1970, a time when Hollywood was undergoing one of its most transformative periods. The film, a Western set in a rugged, post-Civil War America, followed a storyline blending crime, greed, and lawlessness. While Westerns had long been a staple of American cinema, the late 60s and early 70s saw the genre evolve. Filmmakers began to challenge traditional morality tales, introducing more nuanced characters, anti-heroes, and a willingness to explore adult themes such as violence, sexuality, and corruption. This shifting landscape set the stage for Barbara Rhoades's daring sequence, giving it both cultural resonance and a touch of rebellion. The era itself was pivotal. Hollywood was emerging from the constraints of the Hays Code, a set of moral guidelines that had dictated content in American films for decades. By the late 60s, the code had largely been replaced by the MPAA rating system, which allowed for more explicit content but still carried significant limitations. Directors were testing boundaries, trying to balance storytelling, audience appeal, and the still conservative expectations of studios. Within this framework, a scene like Barbara Rhoades's intimate moment could be filmed and even hinted at, but the studio retained ultimate control over what made it to the screen. The social climate outside of Hollywood also influenced how films were made and marketed. The late 60s and early 70s were marked by the sexual revolution, a cultural movement advocating greater freedom in sexual expression and challenging traditional norms. Audiences were increasingly receptive to depictions of intimacy and desire, particularly when framed in service of character or narrative, rather than simple titillation. Films that incorporated subtle sexual content could generate buzz and draw viewers, especially when the material was provocative enough to spark conversation, but restrained enough to avoid scandal. There Was a Crooked Man fit neatly into this context. The story itself explored themes of betrayal, greed, and moral ambiguity, and Rhoades's character was a key player in conveying both vulnerability and power. The film's narrative demanded a certain level of intimacy for her scenes, as they helped develop relationships, motivations, and tension among the ensemble cast. While the audience would ultimately see only a portion of the scene, its filming reflected Hollywood's willingness to push boundaries in ways that tested censorship, societal norms, and even actors' comfort zones. Production anecdotes suggest that the set environment mirrored the transitional nature of the industry. Directors, cinematographers, and actors were negotiating a delicate balance between artistic expression and studio constraints. Barbara Rhoades's scene, in particular, exemplified this negotiation. While the intent was bold, the execution required subtlety, framing, and careful editing to align with what was acceptable for mainstream release. In many ways, the sequence became a microcosm of Hollywood at the time. Daring yet disciplined, provocative yet constrained. The marketing of the film also played a role in amplifying the scene's notoriety. Promotional materials, posters, and early reviews hinted at risque moments without explicit revelation. This strategy generated curiosity and anticipation while avoiding censorship issues, effectively turning the unseen elements of Barbara Rhodes's performance into a talking point. Rumors, word of mouth, and fan speculation contributed to a sense of mystique that would outlast the film's theatrical run. Critically, the film received mixed reviews, with some praising its narrative complexity and performances, while others focused on its unconventional depiction of morality and relationships. Barbara Rhodes's scene, though largely unseen by audiences, became emblematic of this tension. It symbolized the intersection of evolving social attitudes, studio caution, and the artistic ambition of filmmakers willing to explore adult themes. There Was a Crooked Man is remembered not only as a Western, but also as a product of its time, a period when Hollywood was redefining itself. The combination of cultural shifts, relaxed censorship, and the sexual revolution created fertile ground for scenes like Barbara Rhodes's, where suggestion and implication could generate as much impact as explicit content. And at the heart of it, Barbara Rhodes's daring presence on set ensured that even decades later, this film and her performance would remain unforgettable, setting the stage for her lasting reputation. Rhodes' career and persona. Rhoades was more than a fleeting Hollywood name. She was a performer whose presence demanded attention long before There Was a Crooked Man. Born in 1947, Rhoades' journey into the entertainment industry combined talent, charisma, and an innate sense of timing that would define her career. Her early years were marked by careful training and small but pivotal roles that allowed her to demonstrate versatility, whether in comedy, drama, or musical performances. While her beauty and allure were undeniable, it was her intelligence, professionalism, and work ethic that earned her respect on sets where egos often ran unchecked. Rhodes's early career in the 60s was characterized by television appearances and supporting roles in feature films. She appeared in shows like The Love Boat, The Rockford Files, and Columbo, often bringing a spark that made her characters memorable despite limited screen time. Her ability to blend charm, humor, and depth made her stand out among peers, and casting directors began to notice her potential for more prominent roles. By the late 60s, she had cultivated a reputation as a reliable, versatile actress capable of handling complex material, a reputation that would make her an ideal candidate for the daring role in There Was a Crooked Man. What set Rhoades apart was her willingness to embrace risk while maintaining professionalism. She wasn't simply a pretty face. She approached every role as an opportunity to explore character psychology and nuance. This approach earned her both respect and cautionary admiration from Hollywood insiders. In an era when actresses were often pigeonholed into stereotypes or ornamental roles, Rhodes's insistence on depth and agency in her performances was notable. She demonstrated that she could command the screen without relying solely on glamour or overt sexuality. Yet she could also navigate scenes requiring intimacy, tension, or vulnerability with precision. Her casting in There Was a Crooked Man was a culmination of her career trajectory. The role required not only charm and allure, but also courage, intelligence, and the ability to navigate one of the era's most controversial scenes. Barbara's willingness to take on material that skirted the edges of censorship and audience expectation reflected a broader philosophy she carried throughout her career. Embrace challenges, trust your instincts, and never allow fear or discomfort to compromise your work. On set, colleagues noted her calm confidence, her ability to follow direction while infusing her own interpretation, and her respect for the collaborative process. Rhoades's persona off-screen was equally compelling. She cultivated a blend of approachability and mystery that made her both relatable and enigmatic. Interviews and public appearances highlighted her wit, intelligence, and grounded perspective, distinguishing her from actresses whose fame relied heavily on glamour or controversy. This combination of professionalism, charm, and discretion was a key factor in how the infamous scene in There Was a Crooked Man became legendary. While she performed daring material, her measured demeanor ensured the focus remained on character and story, rather than scandal or exploitation. Hollywood at the time was an unforgiving environment for women, particularly for those who pushed boundaries. Actresses often faced intense scrutiny, typecasting, and a lack of control over how they were perceived publicly. Rhoades's ability to navigate these pressures while delivering compelling performances demonstrated resilience and intelligence. She understood that a career in Hollywood required strategy as well as talent, choosing roles carefully, balancing risk with prudence, and maintaining an image that combined professionalism with charisma. Her versatility extended beyond dramatic roles. Barbara Rhoades's comedic timing and expressive abilities made her a frequent guest on variety and talk shows, where she charmed audiences with humor and poise. This adaptability contributed to her enduring relevance in an industry where careers could fade quickly. She demonstrated that she could move between mediums, television, film, and stage, while maintaining authenticity and impact. This reputation for reliability and skill made her a natural fit for projects that demanded both daring and discretion, such as her role in There Was a Crooked Man. Beyond the screen, Rhoades's influence was subtle but significant. She modeled an approach to acting that balanced courage and control, allowing performers to take risks without sacrificing professionalism. Younger actresses and co-stars observed her work ethic and demeanor, recognizing a standard of conduct that emphasized craft over sensation. This quiet influence contributed to her reputation as not just a performer, but a figure whose career choices and persona reflected a thoughtful, deliberate approach to Hollywood life. By the time she filmed There Was a Crooked Man, Barbara Rhoades had built a body of work that proved she could handle both comedic and dramatic roles with equal finesse. Her ability to convey depth and nuance, combined with a natural charisma, made her perfect for a scene that relied on suggestion and subtlety rather than overt exposure. The contrast between what audiences imagined and what was shown on screen became a defining aspect of her performance, turning her into a figure whose reputation would outlast the film itself. Even decades later, Barbara Rhoades's persona continues to resonate. She is remembered as a performer who blended courage, intelligence, and charm in a way few could replicate. The legendary scene in There Was a Crooked Man didn't just make her daring, it highlighted her professionalism, her skill, and her understanding of cinematic nuance. In Hollywood, where image often outweighs substance, Barbara Rhoades demonstrated that talent, poise, and careful navigation of risk could create a lasting legacy. Her career, personality, and the choices she made on and off set show why her performance remains a topic of fascination. She embodied a rare combination: the ability to captivate audiences, challenge norms, and maintain control over her craft. But even Barbara's skill and professionalism couldn't escape the heavy hand of Hollywood censorship. What made it to the screen was only part of the story. Hollywood, censorship, and editing. In 1970, Hollywood was in the midst of a delicate transformation. The long-standing Hays Code, which had dictated moral content in films for decades, had been replaced by the fledgling MPA rating system. This new system promised greater creative freedom, but it also brought its own constraints. Studios were cautious, keen to avoid controversy, and often overruled directors' visions to protect box office prospects. In this environment, Barbara Rhodes's daring scene in There Was a Crooked Man became a case study in the balancing act between artistic intent and regulatory control. From the outset, the scene's production was carefully planned. The director, Joseph L. Mankiewicz, wanted to capture the character's vulnerability and allure without crossing lines that could trigger censorship. Cinematographers used lighting, shadows, and camera angles to suggest intimacy without explicit exposure. Barbara Rhodes's performance was fearless, but the studio was equally cautious. Executives insisted on multiple takes with alternative framing, ensuring that any potential objectionable content could be mitigated in editing. The scene's boldness had to coexist with the reality of what could legally and commercially appear on screen. Editing became the final line of defense. After shooting, footage was meticulously reviewed to comply with MPAA guidelines and to satisfy studio executives' risk assessments. Shots that were too revealing were cropped or obscured, lighting was adjusted to hide details, and certain takes were removed entirely. The meticulous editing process ensured that the final scene retained its dramatic and narrative impact while softening the risque elements that had fueled on-set speculation. This careful sculpting of content illustrates how censorship in Hollywood was rarely about outright suppression. It was about control, balance, and the calculated management of audience perception. The constraints imposed by censorship had a paradoxical effect. While the explicitness of Barbara's performance was reduced, the mystique and allure of the scene were amplified. Audiences were left with hints of daring and sophistication, forcing their imagination to fill in what the camera could not show. In many ways, the scene's enduring legend is rooted in this tension between what was filmed and what was ultimately seen. Hollywood's self-imposed restrictions created a space where suggestion became more powerful than full exposure. The editing process was not without its challenges. Directors and editors often debated over how much could remain before the MPAA or conservative audiences objected. In Rhodes's scene, even minor details could shift perception from dramatic nuance to scandal. Maintaining the delicate balance required collaboration between the director, cinematographer, editor, and actress. Barbara Rhodes's professionalism made this possible. Her ability to perform with subtlety allowed the team to preserve the emotional weight of the scene despite unavoidable cuts. Studios also considered marketing implications when finalizing content. Promotional campaigns needed to generate intrigue without promising more than the film delivered. Posters, trailers, and press releases hinted at a daring performance, emphasizing Barbara's star power and the scene's notoriety without crossing lines that could spark censorship battles. This approach created buzz and anticipation, turning the unseen scene into a talking point long before the film premiered. The careful editing and strategic marketing worked hand in hand to enhance Barbara's mystique while navigating the era's complex censorship landscape. The cultural context of the time amplified the scene's significance. Audiences were beginning to embrace more adult content, reflecting broader societal shifts of the late 60s and early 70s, including the sexual revolution. Hollywood, however, remained cautious, negotiating the fine line between artistic expression and commercial viability. The editing decisions surrounding Rhodes's scene revealed the tension between these competing forces: a filmmaker's vision, an actress's daring performance, and the studio's need to protect profits and reputation. The resulting scene was a compromise, but one that left a lasting impression precisely because of what it suggested rather than what it explicitly revealed. Even decades later, film historians and fans analyze the scene's editing as a masterclass in restraint. It demonstrates how filmmakers could push boundaries while staying within regulatory and commercial limits. Barbara Rhoades' ability to convey power, vulnerability, and intrigue within these constraints underscores her talent and professionalism. The scene's legendary status is a direct outcome of the interplay between performance, direction, and the studio's editorial oversight. The censorship and editing surrounding "There Was a Crooked Man" highlight a central truth of Hollywood filmmaking. Sometimes what is withheld is just as impactful as what is shown. Barbara Rhoades' daring performance survived these limitations, leaving an indelible mark on audiences' imagination and cementing her place in cinematic history. The careful shaping of the scene ensured that it would be remembered not for explicit content, but for its artistry, subtlety, and the mythos it created, a perfect illustration of how Hollywood's restrictions could paradoxically enhance a scene's power. While censorship determined what the audience saw, public and critical reaction would take the legend even further, turning whispers into enduring fascination. The public's critical reaction. Even though Barbara Rhoades' daring scene in "There Was a Crooked Man" was heavily edited and largely unseen by audiences, it generated a remarkable buzz that transcended the screen. The combination of studio hints, marketing teases, and on-set rumors created an aura of intrigue that critics, journalists, and moviegoers could not ignore. In many ways, the public's fascination with the scene surpassed the actual content, turning a brief cinematic moment into a legend that has endured for decades. Contemporary reviews of the film were generally mixed. Some critics praised the film's gritty take on the Western genre, highlighting its morally ambiguous characters and layered storytelling. Others focused on its unconventional depictions of relationships and power dynamics, particularly noting the tension surrounding Barbara Rhoades' character. While the scene itself was not explicit, critics were quick to acknowledge the daring performance it represented. Terms like provocative, suggestive, and bold frequently appeared in print, emphasizing the cultural impact of what was seen and what was deliberately left unseen. Audiences, too, were captivated. Word of mouth became the driving force behind the scene's notoriety. Moviegoers shared whispers about the actress's performance, speculating on what had been filmed versus what the studio allowed into the final cut. The hype created a feedback loop. Curiosity fueled viewership, and viewership fueled further speculation. Fans were eager to discuss and dissect the scene long after the film had left theaters, proving that imagination could rival reality when it came to cinematic allure. Marketing played a crucial role in shaping public perception. Posters and trailers suggested that Barbara Rhoades' role contained risque elements, though they carefully avoided explicit imagery. The studio's strategy amplified the scene's mystique, creating anticipation while respecting the boundaries of the era's censorship. This clever positioning helped the film achieve cultural traction without courting scandal, and it allowed Rhoades' performance to stand out in a crowded Hollywood landscape. Interestingly, much of the discussion surrounding the scene was fueled by the contrast between Barbara Rhoades' reputation as a professional actress and the perceived audacity of her role. Industry insiders recognized her skill in balancing charm, intelligence, and subtlety, making her performance resonate even in truncated form. The interplay between talent and suggestion elevated the scene beyond mere sensationalism. Fans and critics alike appreciated that the impact came from nuance, presence, and implication, rather than overt display. Over time, the scene became a point of fascination for film historians, Scholars examining Hollywood's evolving depiction of sexuality often cite Rhoades's performance as a key example of how suggestion and editing could generate cultural buzz. The scene illustrates the tension between performer intent, directorial vision, studio oversight, and audience imagination. Its enduring reputation highlights the ways in which Hollywood marketing, editing, and public perception intersect to create cinematic mythology. Even decades later, fan forums, retrospectives, and academic articles discuss the lost impact of the scene. Collectors and enthusiasts analyze stills, promotional materials, and interviews to reconstruct what was intended versus what was shown. Barbara Rhoades herself became emblematic of the subtle power of suggestion, an actress capable of leaving a lasting impression without overt exposure. This reputation has continued to enhance her legacy, ensuring that the performance remains a topic of fascination long after the film's release. Critically, the scene's impact extends beyond the film itself. It influenced how studios approached sexual content in mainstream films, demonstrating the value of subtlety and implication. Rhoades's performance became a reference point for actresses navigating similar territory in the 70s and beyond, highlighting the balance between daring performance and professional restraint. By leaving much to the imagination, she proved that anticipation and suggestion could rival explicit depiction in shaping audience engagement. The media, too, played a role in cementing the scene's legendary status. Interviews with cast and crew, gossip columns, and magazine features kept the story alive, often emphasizing the tension between performance, censorship, and audience expectation. Critics frequently remarked on Rhoades's ability to command attention without crossing boundaries, reinforcing the idea that her talent and professionalism were as noteworthy as the scene's rumored daring. Even as critics debated and audiences speculated, the scene's legend paved the way for a lasting cultural footprint, influencing both Barbara Rhoades's career and Hollywood's approach to daring performances, a performance that still resonates. Barbara Rhoades's performance in There Was a Crooked Man has endured as one of Hollywood's most fascinating what-if moments. Even decades after the film's release, the scene that teased daring intimacy continues to captivate audiences, historians, and critics alike. Its lasting appeal is not due to explicit content, which was never fully shown, but rather the skill, timing, and subtlety Rhoades brought to her role. The interplay of suggestion and restraint transformed a brief sequence into a moment of enduring cultural significance. Her daring performance became a reference point for actresses navigating similar challenges. In an era when Hollywood often constrained female talent within narrowly defined roles, Rhoades demonstrated that an actress could command attention through professionalism and nuance. By balancing confidence, vulnerability, and discretion, she showed that power on screen did not always require overt displays of sexuality. Her approach influenced other performers, setting a precedent for how suggestion and implication could create as strong, if not stronger, an impact than explicit action. The scene also reflects broader shifts in Hollywood and society. The 70s marked a period of evolving attitudes toward sexuality and morality, and Rhoades's performance sits at the intersection of these cultural changes. Studios were exploring how to appeal to audiences increasingly comfortable with adult themes, while still respecting commercial and censorship constraints. Her work illustrates how filmmakers could navigate these tensions, using subtlety and professionalism to push boundaries without risking scandal. In doing so, Rhoades helped redefine the possibilities for female performers in mainstream cinema. Beyond its influence on performers, the scene contributed to the mythology of Hollywood itself. Film enthusiasts, historians, and pop culture commentators have dissected and discussed the scene for decades. Its legend thrives on the tension between imagination and reality, between what was filmed and what was revealed. Barbara Rhoades became emblematic of how off-screen reputation and on-screen skill could combine to create a lasting narrative. The fascination surrounding the scene underscores a broader principle. Hollywood's allure often lies as much in mystery as in spectacle. Her performance also elevated the film's legacy. While There Was a Crooked Man is remembered as a Western with morally complex characters, Rhoades' sequence added a layer of sophistication and intrigue. The scene's subtle audacity highlighted the evolving storytelling of the genre, demonstrating that Westerns could tackle adult themes with intelligence and restraint. In retrospect, the film's approach to character, morality, and implied intimacy can be seen as pioneering, and Rhoades' contribution was central to that achievement. The cultural impact extends to audience expectations. The notion that a performer could command attention and generate discussion without fully revealing everything challenged conventional ideas of screen presence. Rhoades' work exemplified that suggestion. Timing and nuance could create anticipation, engagement, and lasting memory. Fans continue to celebrate her performance, often citing the scene as a classic example of skillful subtlety in film, proving that effective storytelling does not rely solely on what is shown, but also on what is implied. Barbara Rhoades' influence can also be seen in retrospectives and scholarly discussions. Film studies often cite her performance as an example of how censorship, cultural norms, and performance skill intersect to shape cinematic history. Her work demonstrates that artistry can thrive even within limitations, and that actors who embrace both courage and professionalism can leave an enduring legacy. The unseen scene has become part of Hollywood lore, serving as a lesson in the power of suggestion and the lasting impression of carefully crafted performances. Even decades later, Rhoades' scene sparks curiosity. Audiences, critics, and historians alike continue to debate what was intended versus what was shown, keeping her performance alive in public imagination. The legend she created, whether through daring, subtlety, or a combination of both, ensures that her contribution to cinema remains relevant and admired. Did you find her performance daring? Comment down below and subscribe to our channel for more.